Inhumans is a good show. I'm saying is because as of right now, it hasn't been confirmed that it's been canceled yet. It most likely will be canceled, unfortunately. But for now, Inhumans is a good show. And notice that I'm saying good. I'm not saying great. I'm saying it's a good show. It's acceptable for what it is. I'm not comparing it. I'm not saying it's better than Daredevil, Defenders, anything like that. I'm just saying that Inhumans, by itself, is a good show, and it doesn't deserve the hate that it received. I had no experience with the Inhumans. I didn't know anything about them before this TV show came out. This show was my first experience with the Inhumans, and I went to go see the IMAX premiere of the first two episodes. I was like, hey, I like everything Marvel. Might as well check it out, see what it's like. And I went to the IMAX premiere. It was a really cool experience because it was pretty much just me and my girlfriend in the theater. There were a few other people, but it's not very often you get to go to an IMAX movie with mostly empty audience. That was pretty cool. But I enjoyed the IMAX experience. I thought it was really good. And then I waited a couple weeks for the show to actually start on TV, and I rewatched the first two episodes because they added more extra scenes into it. That kind of explains some more of the subplot to the story. And I watched the show every week as it came out, and I was very happy with it. I thought it was really good. And unfortunately, along the way, I had to bear witness to people hating on the show and criticizing it and saying it was terrible and that anyone who liked it was a horrible judge of television. And I just thought that was really disappointing. I thought that was really undeserved of the show. I think the show was good for what it was, and a lot of people were really mean and nasty towards the show, and I just think it was completely unwarranted. I think the show was a decent show. Let's get into it. Let's get into the criticisms of the show. The first complaint that people started saying about the show when just the teaser images came out was that the costumes were bad. I don't understand this at all. It's probably just subjective, but I thought the costumes were fine. I don't think that was a real big complaint by any means. Yeah, the costumes I think look okay. I was totally fine with them. People complained about Medusa's wig. I don't know. I didn't really notice it that much. When I watch TV shows and movies, I don't really focus on shit like that. I'm more interested in the story. But the costumes were fine. I didn't really see anything wrong with them. People complained about the writing. The writing didn't really bother me. I don't think it was bad. Like, there were a few moments where, like, yeah, it could have been better, but it wasn't like watching the show was just a cringe fest. Most of the time, I think the writing held up. There were a couple moments of romance that I thought were a little bit cheesy, but most of the time I thought the writing was fine, and it kept me interested and engaged, so I don't understand that. People criticized them shaving Medusa's head, which was obviously done as a point to save on the budget because then they didn't have to CG her hair. But honestly, even though that moment happened in the first episode, it still had an emotional impact on me. Sure, it might have had a more emotional impact if we, got to know this character for a season than they did it in a later season. But still, in that moment, I felt like they did it well enough that it had an emotional impact. Like, they took their time with it. And even though we hadn't developed a strong relationship with this character, I still felt like it hit pretty hard. Just like knowing women in general losing their hair like that's a really rough thing for them to go through. They always say that a woman's hair is as important as a car to a man. I thought that moment was fine. People criticized it. So I don't know. Also, one complaint that really bothered me that I thought was just really dumb was that Marvel has set a standard. It set a bar for itself, and that this show did not meet that bar. And I think that's just a really dumb complaint. I don't think you can expect anything to be a certain bar all the time. Like, it's okay for things to be lower in quality. They can still be enjoyable. I mean, the Sci-Fi Channel would not exist if people weren't okay with watching lesser quality stuff. And it's also saying that just because everything else that's Marvel is really good and that this show might not have been as great as those things, that it's just unwatchable. I think that's an excuse that doesn't work. That's like saying older movies are unwatchable because their effects aren't as good. That's like saying RoboCop, the original RoboCop, is a terrible movie because it was made late 80s, I think, mid 80s. saying that that movie's a bad movie just because of its effects, and saying that the new RoboCop is better than it because it actually has actual CG. You know, if you said that to someone, you get slapped in the face. I think the same. I think it still applies to the Inhumans. It's like, sure, Inhumans might not be as good as Daredevil or the movies. I still think it's watchable and enjoyable. It doesn't have to maintain that super high bar of quality all the time. It can still be a good show. It can still be enjoyable. And I understand that the hardcore Inhumans fans might be upset by that, but it's like, if you told your younger self that there was going to be an Inhumans show one day, he'd be so happy. He'd be so excited. And the criticism for the show was really unwarranted. And it got to the point where it was so hateful and negative. It was actually like, I felt offended for the people who were actually making the show and the actors and stuff. It was just really insulting and unnecessary, to be honest. People are welcome to criticize, but when you criticize people who enjoy something, that's very immature and unfortunate. And you know, the Inhumans succeeded in one thing, at least for me, is that I never knew anything about the Inhumans outside of the little bit of Inhumans they talked about in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but that almost seems like a completely different brand of Inhumans almost. But watching the TV show Inhumans got me inspired to read the comics, and you know, I think if anything, that's a huge success for the show, because in the end we want these superhero shows to encourage people to go back and read the comics, read the source material, and that's what Inhumans did for me. The Inhumans show showed me these awesome new characters, and I was like, shit, I'm going to go back and read all these comics that are great. I didn't even know they existed, you know? So the show just, it really didn't deserve the hate that it received. Unfortunately, I do think the show's going to get canceled because it didn't get the viewership it wanted, and it didn't get the reviews it wanted. So I don't think a second season's going to be warranted, unfortunately. Hopefully we will see these characters again in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., or I'd be even okay if they took the cast and just put them into a movie as a sequel to the show, because the show does end on a cliffhanger. Spoilers, I guess. Inhumans end up on Earth at the end, but that's not like the huge main plot of the story, but they end up on Earth at the end, and it's kind of like, where do they go from here sort of thing. So it'd be cool to see more of that. If we do get a second season, I will definitely be watching it, but if they decide not to do a second season and maybe wait a couple of years and make a movie out of that, I'd be okay with that. Just because it's in the MCU already, they can't really reboot it without rebooting the entire MCU. I'd be okay if they made a second season or a movie out of it. And you know, the fact of the matter is that there were a lot of people who did enjoy the show. As the episodes would come out, I was keeping tabs on Twitter and Reddit, and I would, you know, type in Inhumans and see what people were talking about it. And there were a lot of people who were saying, like, yeah, the show's really good, actually. It's a lot better than the critics say. It's a lot better than the haters say. You know, there were quite a few people out there who I think honestly, sincerely enjoyed the TV show Inhumans, and I'm one of them. I think that the show was really good. My girlfriend and I watched it together. She really liked it as well. You know, I think the show really deserves more credit than it got. In the end, who really knows what the future of Inhumans is, if we're ever going to see it in TV or movies again. I think it's unfortunate that the show got all the hate that it got. You know, the fans can kind of blame themselves. It's like they want to see Inhumans in TV shows or movies, but it's in a TV show and they hate on it. You know, it's like you could give it good criticism, you know, supportive criticism, and say, hey, I didn't like this, but you can still support the show. And then when they do the second season, they can improve on it and make it better. But instead, people just decided to hate on it, and now it's dead, you know, and it's like, that's your fault. That's the fans' fault who hated on the show. You could have given good criticism and watched the show and supported it, and then hoped that the second season would be better, you know. So, first season was like a trial run, and you guys decided to kill it instead. So, if Inhumans doesn't continue on in TV shows or movies, you can really blame yourselves. That's all I can say.